participating. Code section 728.7 further provides that Code chapter 728 does not prohibit the attendance of minors at an exhibition or display of artworks or the use of any material in any public library. Code section 728.1 defines obscene material, which includes material the average person, taking the material as a whole and applying contemporary community standards with respect to what is suitable material for minors, would find appeals to the prurient interest and is patently offensive, and the material, taken as a whole, lacks serious literary, scientific, political, or artistic value that is known as the Miller test, which comes from a Supreme Court ruling in the early 70s, Miller versus California, if I remember right. So with that, we will open the comments around the table, and then we'll open it up to public comment. Senators?
You first, if
I'd like
you
to hear
wish.
what everyone has to say.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the introduction. I would like to set a little bit of context because I have a couple of particular questions that I'd like the people here to address if they would like. The chair did read the definition of obscene material. To be obscene, it has to satisfy a series of criteria, but the last one here is the one that I think is most relevant, that the material taken as a whole lacks serious literary, scientific, political, or artistic value. The exemption that, or the section that is proposed to be deleted, says nothing in this chapter prohibits the use of appropriate material for educational purposes in school, library, etc. So my first question is, if material is lacking serious literary, scientific, political, or artistic value, what such material would nevertheless still be appropriate material for educational purposes? If it has no literary, scientific, etc. value, it seems hard to argue that any piece of literature or whatever would be appropriate for educational purposes. So I'm not sure that the first part of this has any relation really to obscenity. The second question, and related here, is whether we have any libraries in Iowa that have to any significant degree, have any obscene material there for use by anyone. So those are two questions I'd like addressed. Let's see. Well, okay, I think that's probably the core of what's concerning to me here. If removing this section, if we don't have any appropriate educational purpose material in our libraries that's obscene, then I'm not sure exactly why this is removing an obscenity objection. What seems to me is it removes a section of the code that tend to protect libraries from frivolous complaints or lawsuits with regard to the educational material that they have available for students. So with that, I'd be happy, Mr. Chair, to hear from all the people assembled.
Very good. Thank you. Where would we like to be in? Start over here, right here?
Sure.
Okay.
Amber Williams. You bet. Amber Williams with Inspired Life. We support the bill because no institution should be exempt from the law when it comes to protecting minors. Right now, Iowa's obscenity code contains a carve-out that shields public libraries and accredited schools from the same standards that apply everywhere else. This bill simply removes that blanket exemption. It does not rewrite the definition of obscenity. It does not ban books. It does not criminalize literature with serious value. Parents should not have to accept a lower standard for protection for their children simply because the material is accessed in a public institution. Schools and libraries serve minors. With that responsibility comes accountability. This bill is about consistency under the law, and it is about protecting children, and it is about ensuring that public institutions operate within the same legal boundaries that apply to everyone else. If material is legally obscene for minors, its location shouldn't give it immunity. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Jeff Pitts, speaking for the Iowa Faith and Freedom Coalition. We do support the bill. And our rationale is pretty simple. Should a child in a public library be more safe or less safe from obscene materials than they are in a public square? Common sense says the library should be a sanctuary, but under current law, the opposite is true. Children are actually less protected inside a library than they are in other public arenas. It's our position that public decency should be a given in taxpayer-funded institutions. Indecency should be off limits within Iowa's accredited schools and libraries. And custodians of these public spaces should not be legally exempt from standards of decency the rest of us are required to follow in public. If anything, they should be specifically compelled to a higher standard, not a lower one. The number one priority of a public library should be to provide a safe space where parents don't have to shield the eyes, ears, and minds of their children. Every other objective, in our view, no matter how worthy, should come in a distant second. As to your question, Senator Cornbrough, the second sentence that you didn't read says nothing in this chapter, meaning obscenities, prohibits the attendance of minors in an exhibition of a display of artworks, or the use of any other materials in a public library. It essentially means it opens it up to not every material, but most materials. If it didn't leave things out, if it didn't make things out, then what is the point of having it at all?
I understand your point, but it led to my second question: to what extent do libraries in Iowa actually have obscene materials in their collections?
Thanks, can we go on?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna run it, just so everybody knows, I'm not gonna sit here with a stopwatch, but I'm gonna trust that you can kind of keep a little time and respect everybody else in the room that would like to speak. Because it is a topic that I'm sure if you want to speak on.
Nathan Arnold, Professional Educators of Iowa. Let me start by saying that I do believe that obscenity can be very harmful to young people. The famous General Saladin from the 12th century once said, if you want to destroy a nation without war, make nudity common among its young generations. That being said, age appropriateness is very much, at the end of the day, a discretionary judgment call. When a parent lets their kids see Lord of the Rings PG-13 or Braveheart R, discretionary judgment call, and I just don't want to go down the slippery slope of criminalizing these discretionary judgment calls. If we don't think that schools are able to make them because they've abused that discretion, that's a conversation to have. But we do want to keep, for the sake of free speech, constitutional safeguards in place. So that's why we actually registered against the bill, despite the fact we support the goals behind it.
Well, thank you for your comments. I'm John Butler from Pella. And we've been working on this for 4 years now. We're supporting the bill because we do not believe that material that depicts sexual violence, rape, incest, physical aggression, sexual assault, minors and adults engaged in sex acts as being sexually victimized are suitable for young people. I could not read from these books in this room out loud. So the obscenity rule, obscene material is not protected by the Constitution. The children and young adult sections of a library should serve as spaces for learning and growth, not as repositories for sexualized content that confuse and distress young minds. We should promote what is true, good, and beautiful to our children, not what is vile, ugly, and bad. Much of this material comes from the American Library Association, which is a political organization determined to run their agenda into our schools. And in our public library, we have 430 sexually explicit or perversively vulgar materials in the children's and young adult sections. We cannot legislate morality. People say that, but we legislate morality all the time. No murder, no stealing, no perjury, many other things, no speeding even. But laws, the way laws are structured, change behavior.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who else? Keep going around the room.
My name is Cheryl.
You'll want to speak up because the mic is in the center of the table,
Oh,
so we want to
okay.
make sure it gets picked up for the people online.
All right. My name is Cheryl Elslow, and I'm with Protect My Innocence. And I want to read a few points from the June 27, 2025 U.S. Supreme Court ruling on Free Speech Coalition versus Paxton. States have authority to prevent children from accessing sexually explicit content. History, tradition, and precedents establish that sexual content that is obscene to minors but not to adults is protected in part and unprotected in part. States may prevent minors from accessing such content found in Ginsburg versus New York, but may not prevent adults from doing the same, Butler versus Michigan. The First Amendment leaves undisturbed states' traditional power to prevent minors from accessing speech that is obscene from their perspective. That power includes the power to require proof of age before an individual can access such speech. It follows that no person, adult or child, has a First Amendment right to access such speech without first submitting proof of age. Public libraries should be places of learning, discovery, and safety for all children, but across Iowa, that trust is being violated. Taxpayer-funded libraries are stocked with books with sexually explicit content and make them available to minors without parental knowledge or consent. When parents raise concerns that they are dismissed as book banners or accused of censorship, but this isn't about banning books, it's about setting common sense boundaries and protecting our kids from graphic, age inappropriate material. It's been argued that children need to see themselves in books, but here's the reality. Children who have experienced sexual abuse or trauma should not be re-traumatized by stumbling upon graphic content in libraries. This deeply sensitive issue requires professional counseling, not surprise exposure through explicit literature.
Can we get to your conclusion, please?
Okay.
I want to hear all
But
sides of the issue.
But in Iowa, libraries and schools are shockingly exempt from obscenity laws. That means that they can legally distribute obscene contents to minors. This is not just outrageous, it's a loophole big enough to drive a bookmobile through. The state of Iowa has a constitutional right and duty to protect children from material with harmful, obscene to minors content and to prohibit this assault on innocence. Please pass SF 2119.
Thank you. Who would like to speak next? Right, let's go right here and then we'll come back to Ryan.
Right here?
Yeah.
Right. I'm Chris Stoner. I'm the director of the Hiawatha Public Library and parent of 3 minors, one of whom is present here with me today. I've heard discussion of this exemption removal claiming that since librarians say libraries don't contain obscene items, they don't need this exemption in the first place. Others have said that libraries do have obscene material, but let me be clear. Nothing in my library meets the legal definition of obscenity. However, removing this exemption directly opens up libraries and their staff to legal attack. If an individual disagrees with the content of an item in our collection, they can circumvent a library's book challenge process and take the library to court instead by claiming it as obscene. When the proper approach is to have the faith in your own parenting to curate materials that are appropriate for your family to access and give incrementally greater freedom of access to your children as they grow. But the greater problem is that this bill doesn't exist in isolation, and it's disingenuous to claim this bill will do nothing when it will enable cumulative effects to libraries when combined with other bills proposed during this session. For example, SF 2177 is a bill that, according to legislators in subcommittee last week, puts no requirements on library staff and only prohibits library third-party contractors from providing access to hardcore pornography, which again, the services my library contracts with don't provide to begin with. However, that bill also prohibits minors from accessing digital services that offer obscene material. If that bill and this bill both pass, Iowa's libraries would have to age gate all of our digital resources and ebook services to be accessible to adults only or risk more frivolous lawsuits defending unfounded obscenity claims. Finally, there's a reason that the two library bills that make the most sweeping and detrimental changes to libraries, HF 2309 and HSB 720, both include removing this exemption. That's because this exemption is a fundamental building block of ensuring free and open access to varied viewpoints on subjects by protecting libraries from self-censorship out of fear of litigation. Do not pass this bill forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan Ben with the Family Leader. We support the bill because it removes an exemption from the obscenity code that is unnecessary. I think Senator Warmbach actually kind of stole my first point, which is the definition of obscenity in Iowa code already excludes the material that opponents of the bill stated are concerned about. If a book has literary, political, scientific, or artistic value, it is an obscene in the first place, so that should be a concern. One of our top priorities of the Family Leader is protecting kids from pornographic or obscene content. So we're very appreciative of Iowa's current law that makes it illegal to provide obscene material to minors, but it really doesn't make sense to us why we want to exempt out specific locations or government institutions. If showing an obscene picture to a child's back park or at the school or right here in this building, why our library is different. We believe the law should apply equally everywhere because obscenity harms kids equally everywhere. Thank you.
We'll continue around the room, yeah. Yep. And you're quite a ways from the mic, just speak up, it'll be good.
Yeah, okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great, okay, so first I want to say that book challenges never work. It's been tried by parents all across Iowa, nothing ever comes from it, so. And then also, I would read some of these books that people are questioning whether they are obscene or not, but since we have a minor, maybe two, in the room, I would be in violation of Iowa law. So I will not do that. However, I wanted to start out by saying, so Iowa already clearly defines obscene material, yet the exemption in section 728.7 creates a double standard by allowing material harmful to minors to be exempt simply because it is housed in a public library or a public school. Location does not change content, and Iowa is not alone in correcting this inconsistency in law. The U.S. Supreme Court has long affirmed that states have the authority to protect minors from obscene material. In Ginsburg versus New York, the court made clear that material lawful for adults may still be restricted for minors. Likewise, Prince versus Massachusetts recognized that the state's authority to protect children extends further than its authority over adults. Courts have also affirmed that libraries routinely make content decisions. As stated in Little versus Llano County, selecting which books belong in a library is not book banning. It is the core function of a library. Protecting children is not censorship, it is constitutional responsibility. Senate File 2119 ensures Iowa's laws are applied consistently and without double standards. Thank you.
I'm Gabby Fissler, just a concerned parent in support of this bill. Everything that I was going to say has already been said.
Continue on around.
I'm Connie Ryan. I'm Executive Director of Interfaith Alliance of Iowa and Action Fund, and we are registered opposed to the legislation. I've had trouble trying to put my thoughts together on this bill, and I think it's because I don't understand why we're having this conversation. I trust librarians. I trust educators. You're an educator, Senator. I trust them. They're professionals. They know what they're doing. They are not putting children in danger. Our definition of what is appropriate for whatever age can differ, but I trust that librarians are going to make that right decision for our young people in our state. And this bill is unnecessary. It is stoking fear, and I would urge you to put it in a drawer. Thank you.
Melissa Peterson with the Iowa State Education Association. We're registered in opposition, and I haven't struggled to find my comments. This is not a loophole. This is not an oversight. This is an intentional exemption for educational materials. And we would strongly encourage you to oppose this bill. I do appreciate the acknowledgement that our librarians, that our teachers know exactly what they're doing. I also think, I would echo the comments of the Hiawatha librarian, we need to make sure that parents are engaged. And if you don't like your child having access to something, we would strongly encourage you to exercise your parental rights, which do exist within our public education system and other educational institutions. Be active parents, be engaged, don't restrict access for other students or materials that have educational value, which courts have decided time and time and again is why there is this exemption. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason Bunnell, Iowa Atheists and Freethinkers. We are against this bill as well. This very much seems to be a solution in search of a problem. There have been no major instances of this kind of thing happening. This just gives the legislation another tool to cool free speech, to tamp down on First Amendment rights, and it abdicates the responsibility of parents, educators, and librarians to do what we pay them and train them to do. There's no need for the Iowa State Legislature to get involved in this and declare what is and is not obscene. We should trust our institutions and our parents to do this. I would also challenge folks to go into libraries. Look at where these purported obscene materials are. They are not out on the front page. They are not out open. You have to specifically go search for them. That's why so many speakers have a small list, because they are searching for a problem to attack. And this is a massive sledgehammer. They're looking to smash down the free speech of everybody involved in this. So I oppose this bill, and I encourage you to please table this.
Thank you.
Hi, Damian Thompson, representing Iowa Safe Schools. We're registered in opposition to the legislation. Over the course of this hearing, we've heard language that paints Iowa's libraries and librarians as if they were willfully distributing obscene material to children. That characterization is not only inaccurate, it is deeply unfair to the trained professionals who serve our communities every day. Librarians are educators, public servants, and stewards of knowledge. They're not smut peddlers, and framing them that way distorts both the law and the reality in our libraries. Let's start with common ground. Everyone in this room wants to ensure that children do not have access to truly obscene material. It's not a partisan issue, it's a shared value. Our concern is that repealing the exemption in section 728.7 can create unintended consequences that go far beyond the goal. Right now, Iowa law recognizes that schools and public libraries operate in an educational context. That exemption allows trained professionals, teachers, school boards, librarians to use age-appropriate materials that may address complex topics in literature, science, history, or art. Without that exemption, those professionals could face potential criminal exposure for simply doing their jobs. For example, a high school English teacher teaching a classic novel that deals with a sexual assault as part of a broader moral or historical discussion could suddenly be scrutinized under criminal obscenity standards. Biology teacher explaining human reproduction using medically accurate diagrams could face complaints. A school library carrying a book that discusses the realities of bullying or abuse, topics that many Iowa students experience firsthand, could become the subject of a legal challenge. Importantly, Iowa's obscenity statute already requires that material, taken as a whole, lacks serious literary, scientific, political, or artistic value. The current exemption simply acknowledges that educational institutions are uniquely positioned to make those determinations responsibly. We urge you to consider whether repealing this long-standing exemption advances clarity and good governance, or whether it invites legal ambiguity, costly litigation, and unnecessary state intrusion into local schools and libraries. Thank you.
And I would like to state that I'm taking notes and I'm listening as we go around the room. I don't think a single person who decided this issue has characterized the librarian in the way that you have walked in saying they were characterizing. This has been a free dialogue, which is it should be in a public hearing, and you came in with a canned answer. But I actually expected to hear maybe some inflammatory comments. I've yet to hear one from either side. So no one's is trying to characterize librarians in that manner.
You and I have a very different interpretation of what we're hearing, Senator, and that's okay.
So,
Yeah, I would invite you to ask some of the librarians how they're hearing some of the comments in this room.
Last week I heard similar situations in the same place, so.
I can't speak to last
Yes,
week.
So, yeah, fair enough, fair enough. Keenan Grove and Iowa, we are opposed to the bill, and our concern is twofold. Number one, as was mentioned before, there is nothing in our public libraries that meets the legal definition of obscenity under the Miller test. There may be some books that people find offensive, that they find disgusting, that they find objectionable in many different ways. Somebody mentioned 430 different books. None of those 430 books, period, the end, meet the Miller test. It would be illegal for the library to distribute them under federal law at that point. And so this is an exemption for state law, right? What we're talking about in some ways would not have any impact because these books do not exist in those libraries. What was brought up before, though, is there are other bills floating around in this legislature at this time that would create a 1-2 punch for librarians. It would remove their exemption, and it would, in some cases, allow parents to initiate suits to determine whether or not something is obscene. So these folks do not, and are not familiar with the Miller test, they could initiate nuisance lawsuits if this exemption is removed on the basis that they find something to be obscene. We've already heard several folks insinuate that they believe these materials to be obscene, whether they are or not. And I think that belief will translate into legal action and ultimately drain public coffers, defending against baseless lawsuits that are ultimately just designed to harass libraries.
Sir, may I respond to that?
We'll come back around if we have time. Thank you.
Craig Patterson, here representing the Iowa Library Association, and I would just echo some of the comments made there. I want to defer my time, if I can, to Amanda Sand, who's online. She's our government affairs chair for the association. But I did want to point out real quick that there's last time I checked, there was over 240 comments, public comments on the bill. I want to make sure that those Iowans that took the opportunity to make their voice heard, did you have a chance to kind of go through those? So they're overwhelmingly against on this bill, but I'd like to have Amanda be able to speak.
We will go to Amanda then right now. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Is anybody else in the room? Okay, we'll do her and then we'll come back. I just wanted to see her over. Go ahead, Amanda.
Thank you, Chair and members of the subcommittee. My name is Amanda Sand. I'm a public librarian with nearly 10 years of library administration experience, and I've worked with 7 different municipalities. I take the legal and the fiduciary responsibilities of that role very seriously, and I am here today in opposition of this bill. I'll echo some of what has been said. The current obscenity exemption in Iowa is not a blanket exemption. It is very narrowly tailored to cover materials for educational purposes. I'm not going to rehash the Miller test. That's something that has also already been well established by other speakers. But at first glance, this bill may appear to have little impact on libraries. We accurately maintain that we don't carry obscene content. However, in combination with other advancing legislation redefining harmful to minors based solely on the presence of sexual content, this proposal creates serious constitutional concerns. Laws that are not content neutral are strong indicators of censorship and would invite legal challenge. Beyond the constitutional issues, there's significant financial implications. The legislation would increase the risk of litigation for municipal libraries and their governing bodies. Cities and counties would bear the duty to defend these cases. Counties would bear the responsibility to prosecute these cases. Libraries and trustees would be drawn into costly legal proceedings. Liability insurance premiums would likely rise, and entities may struggle to obtain adequate coverage if it is even available at all. And this is true whether they are successful or not. But at a time when local library budgets are already stretched, this bill is going to expose communities to additional financial risk. For these and all of the other reasons that were already stated, I urge you to oppose this legislation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Amanda. We'll go to one more online. We are at our time, and I'm sure the lounge is going to be used quickly. So Courtney, we'll have you speak, and then I have a couple in the room, and then we'll wrap it up.
Because unfortunately what happens, so the minority party, many of us, they give it to us.
Courtney, did you still want to speak?
Yes, hello, sorry, took a second to unmute. Thank you for this legislation, and please vote yes on SF 2119. I'm a mother of 3 minors in Iowa, and there should be nowhere in the state of Iowa, including libraries and educational institutions, that obscenity is available to them or permitted to be shown to them. With the current revelations of the horrific crimes committed against minor children by the Epstein network, we should all be on high alert to prevent these crimes from occurring again under our watch. Minors who are exposed to obscenity are much more likely to be trafficked or a victim of a sex crime. I am also very concerned about the growing increase of Iowa teachers and school staff committing sex crimes against minor students. We must consider that allowing educational institutions and libraries to have obscene materials is an open invitation for adults with bad intentions to go there for employment to gain access to and identify vulnerable minors at these locations for grooming purposes.
Courtney, I don't want to have to cut you off, but can you wrap it up so that we're getting close?
Sure. Pretending this isn't happening just because they may be a quote trained and licensed professional does not help the children. When we know better, we do better. We can and should do better for Iowa's children. It's clear there's an issue. Let's pass this bill. Thank you.
You had raised your hand, so if you could quickly, please.
Okay, I have a story, a true story of Corey Tenboom. When she was 10 or 11, she would accompany her father on train rides. He was a watchmaker, and on this particular train ride, she asked her father, "What is sex sin?" She had heard that term at school. He looked at her, as he always did, but he didn't answer her this time. When they got to the train stop, he picked up his suitcase off the rack, set it down at her feet, and said, "Corey, would you carry this out?" She tugged at it and she said, "I can't, Dad. It's too heavy." And he said, "Yes, Corey. Some things are too heavy for children to carry. Some knowledge is too heavy. When you are older and stronger, you can bear it. For now, you must trust me to carry it for you." Corey says, "And I was satisfied, more than satisfied, wonderfully at peace. There were answers to this and all my hard questions. For now, I was content to leave them in my Father's keeping. I do not understand why we have books in libraries showing children how to play with their genitalia and others' genitalia. Taxpayer money should not be buying these books." Thank you.
And final speaker. Thank you. Has been patiently back there. I think we passed over you the first time. So.
Thank you, Senator Evans. Anything that would stimulate a neuroendocrine response to stimuli, specifically a dopaminergic response, like drugs, behaviors like gambling, or prurient literary art or pictorial art. Dopaminergic response is highly and very potentially addictive. Take that into consideration, please.
And with that, we need to respect everyone's time that needs to use this room. We'll close out with Senator comments. Senator Pike. I don't have any comments.
Well, first of all, the first sentence in 728.7, nothing in this chapter prohibits the use of appropriate material for educational purposes in schools, library, etc. I suggested at the beginning that obscene material lacking in literary, scientific, or artistic purpose does not fit into the category here of appropriate material for educational purposes. So I think it's appropriate to retain that sentence, all right? There is no overlap there with obscenity. It is appropriate to retain that sentence to insulate libraries from frivolous lawsuits and legal action. As far as the second sentence, nothing in this chapter prohibits attendance of minors, etc., or the use of any materials in any public library. I think that if you wanted to pursue a more narrow approach, where you would require parental consent for an individual student to have access to an individual piece of literature, that might be worthy of discussion. I am not convinced by anything said here, however, that there is a great volume of obscene material, or for that matter, any obscene material in the public libraries of Iowa. Let's remember that there are many books, novels, histories, etc., which contain, let's call it challenging material, but which have strong literary, scientific, and artistic merit. The best example I can think of is the Holy Bible, which is one of the great pieces of literature in the entire world, but it has many instances in it of descriptions of rape, of incest, and other, again, I'll use the term challenging behavior. If you don't believe me, try going back and rereading the passage about Sodom and Gomorrah, and keep reading after that. What happened when Lot's wife was she turned to stone or salt? I don't remember. But he was left without a male heir and no wife. Keep reading after that, you'll see what I'm referring to. So I can't support the bill as it stands. If you want to discuss a narrowing amendment, I might be open to that discussion. But I basically have a lot of faith in the librarians of this state, school librarians especially. They have a mandate and professional training to direct children to literature that is appropriate for their age. The Ames Public Library has a children's section, and I think that relying on librarians to give our children guidance is going to be the touchstone that we should rely upon.
Thank you. So on April 1st, 2019, the Iowa Senate passed a bill, 480, restricting parents from disseminating obscene materials. That wasn't that long ago. So there are only two entities in the state of Iowa who are exempt right now, and that's public libraries and public schools. And I would say those are two of the entities that parents should have the most trust in, as far as being able to send their children to either be educated or to gather reading materials. I know many times when I was growing up, my mother would take me to the library. She didn't stay. She trusted in the institution that I was going to be guided to the proper reading materials at my proper reading, and be supported in that, and she was going to be supported in that as well. So what I'm hearing is these materials don't exist, so I don't see why any institution would have fear of striking the obscenity statement from Iowa Code. Matter of fact, I would think that they would welcome it, because it would be supporting of what they're saying, that we do not have obscene materials based on what's already in Iowa Code, the definition of obscene, using the Miller test, which was a Supreme Court decision a number of years ago. So if we don't have those materials, and I'm not going to go around and check every library, then I think we should continue this for further discussion. I would be open to Senator Cornbach's input as well, as I always am, but I think this needs to move forward as long as we have proper support around the table. With that, we end the subcommittee meeting. Thank you for attending.